From Washington, this is VOA News. I'm Steve Norman reporting. Topping the news, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said Friday that there has been a gradual de-escalation in the fighting with Russian-backed separatists in the east. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch said the government-imposed travel restrictions are seriously delaying the delivery of medical help to rebel-controlled areas in the east. Yulia Gorbunova is with HRW.
The shortages especially affected most vulnerable groups of patients, including patients living with HIV, patients receiving treatment for tuberculosis, various forms of hepatitis, and patients receiving opioid substitution therapy.
Human Rights Watch based its conclusion on 10 days of interviews with medical workers and patients in eastern Ukraine. Head of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan, said Friday Islamic State is well armed and financed, but not invincible. He said the U.S.-led coalition airstrikes have softened many of the militants' forces, and they are serious signs that the engine is suffering. On Friday, Iraqi government forces pressed on with their massive offensive to retake Tikrit from the Islamic State, which has reportedly begun to lose ground. Egypt's Gulf allies pledged $12 billion in aid and investment on Friday at an economic conference aiming to bring the battered Egyptian economy back to life. And U.S. and Cuban officials launched a third round of talks that'll happen Monday. Process of restoring diplomatic relations. Two sides last met in Washington in late February. Negotiators have been discussing including reopening embassies in Washington and in Havana. This is VOA News. An American health worker infected with Ebola while working in Sierra Leone has been admitted to the National Institutes of Health's hospital, which is outside Washington, for treatment. Patient is said to be in serious condition. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says the death toll from the Ebola epidemic is now topped 10,000. Jennifer Lazuda reports.
The three most affected Ebola countries, Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, appeared in early January to be making progress in the fight against Ebola. The number of new cases fell from a high of more than 1,000 per week in September and October to an average of 100 per week. Liberia, where the last known Ebola patient was discharged on March 5th, has had no new cases in nearly 3 weeks, according to the World Health Organization. But in Guinea and Sierra Leone, continued pockets of resistance to recommended anti-Ebola measures have continued to push up the caseload and death toll. The WHO says there were 116 new cases reported in these two countries this past week. Jennifer Lazuda for VOA News, Dakar.
Former Maldives President Mohamed Nasheed has been sentenced to 13 years in prison on a conviction of terrorism. Three-judge panel ruled Friday the country's first democratically elected president ordered the illegal arrest of a chief justice when he was in office in January of 2012. Mr. Nasheed's supporters say the trial was politically motivated to prevent him from running against the incumbent president, Yamin Abdul Gayoom, in the 2018 election. In reaction, the U.S. State Department issued a statement on Friday expressing concern that the trial was conducted in a manner contrary to Maldivian law and concerns regarding the lack of impartiality and independence of the judge. Pope Francis marked the second anniversary of his election on Friday. He thanked everyone for the warm welcome and asked all to pray for him.
Essere qui per fare esperienza è un cammino
Commemorating his anniversary on Friday, the 78-year-old Pope also announced what he called an extraordinary Holy Year of Mercy. The year will begin on December 8th and will focus on the theme of mercy. During his 2 years as Pope, Francis has made visits to Eastern Europe, Asia, South America, and the Middle East. In September, he is set to become the fourth Pope to visit the United States since Pope Paul VI traveled to New York in 1965. Winds from a devastating typhoon that blew through Vanuatu are beginning to subside today, revealing widespread destruction and unconfirmed reports of dozens dead. Communications, hard-hit outlying islands all remain down. Cyclone Pam is now headed to New Zealand.
That's the latest world news from VOA.